This week on the Powell Not Found podcast, we're talking the Tortured Poets Department, we're talking the retirement of John Sterling, and we're talking about Conan O'Brien Must Go, the new Max show that finally decided to debut. Coming up next, here we go.
I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl who loves gin. A national pandemic seized her birthday celebration. Although she knew it was coming, we tried not to tell her. She brewed some Irish breakfast tea. She knew her birthday was getting corona.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of the Powell Not Found podcast with your host, Mark Powell. This time around, go ahead and go to the YouTube channel, go to Apple Podcast, leave a review, subscribe to the channel, do all the things that can help the show grow. And this is the first week in a long time that I had technical difficulties, actually. I recorded a whole podcast, and half of it, and the first half of the audio was completely gone. So no backups, no redundancies, nothing. I figured it was like, this setup cannot fail. How can it fail? And then when I went to go take it down and splice it up into something good, it was gone. So re-recording here now, and then we've got the back half of the original one ready to go. But I want to get straight into it because this is the second go around now. This has been quite a week for both myself and the world. Myself being that two of my childhood idols, one of them decided to retire, and the other one decided to come back from basically a long hiatus on television, that being Conan O'Brien. And John Sterling, the radio announcer for the New York Yankees, decided to call it a quits and retire after 5,631 games of doing the Yankees broadcast. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the show. And but first, the big news that kind of hit was Taylor Swift dropped a new album called The Tortured Poets Department, and I've got it right here. The Tortured Poets Department, that's the 11th studio album by Taylor Swift. Listen to it just because I wanted to be part of the zeitgeist. I'm not a big Swiftie. I don't know if I really want to be associated with that term, Swiftie. I always feel like I hear the news talking about Swifties going under the attack because someone gave some sort of criticism or whatever, whether it be right or wrong. I just like music. And I know Taylor Swift. I don't know every detail about Taylor Swift, but I know her music just from the radio and from the number one hits that kind of rise above the ether to get to everyone's ears. And so I figured I'd listen to it since this is the first time that really this has happened since Midnights in 2022. And I listened to that album when it came out, and I decided to kind of like, hey, you know what? Let's actually listen critically. This seems like a different type of vibe going on for Taylor Swift. She seems like she's invoking some sort of pain or whatever. It seems like it's going to be a different type of album, and boy, is it. I wouldn't necessarily call it good upon first listen. It's very, very somber. I feel like this album might take a couple times to listen to. I've listened to it once, and then I've also listened to the additional 15 tracks that were released, the anthology, that were released 3 hours later. So she had 16 tracks on this new album and then 15 more. And so there was a lot of music to listen to. And my first raw opinion of it is probably not the best album in the world. It seems very angry. It's not like one that's going to make you get up and dance. The vibe is very soft. The vibe is very melancholy. And I think that's going to take a lot of people off guard. The the album kind of starts off with the single that they're promoting called Fortnite, and flows into the title track, the Tortured Poets Department, and it doesn't quite get really going until about the fifth or sixth track, and I found myself kind of getting lost within what song was what, because they all kind of had a similar vibe. I know a lot of people have been saying that that Jack Antonoff is responsible for that kind of vibe. He was the former bandmate in Fun, and but it just didn't feel like anything was hitting me, anything was getting its hooks in me. Actually, it took until about 20 tracks until I found a track on the released album, the second released album, the anthology, that I was like, wow, this is a hit, which was, I think, so high school. I think that's upon first listen, I was like, that's great. Slowly but surely, the songs are starting to kind of grow on me, but it's a different vibe. It feels like this was very, and I think a lot of people are saying this, it was an autobiographical kind of songwriting experience. Everything seemed to have come out. Everything that's come out seems to have been hit. But it's not exactly like the most catchy, album that there's going to be. I don't think that you're going to walk away from this album going, wow, there was like 6 or 7 things that I just wanted to get up and dance, and this is great. This is going to be the summer vibe. Somebody was saying to me that it felt very like wintry vibe. Like it felt like you were trapped inside, you were feeling a little bit of seasonal depression, and this is the album that you put on. Everyone's got that album, right? For me, it was John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band album. That was like, if I was angry, I'd listen to that album. Something about the aggression in that album is here, and that is the same vibe that you're going to get from this album. It's a very melancholic, macabre type vibe that's flowing through the album, which is surprising and maybe a little bit different. Maybe this opens Taylor Swift up to a different audience that maybe didn't want to give her songs a chance because it was a little bit too sugar pop for them. That's not what you're getting here. One of the positive things that came out of going out and getting the album, which is something I don't normally do, but I figured, might as well see what this is about, right? I've got a record player, and I got to fill them up with different records, other than the Beatles and all that kind of stuff. It's jam packed with things to look at, which is something that's been incredibly ignored over the course of a lot of music going to streaming, and it's just the lack of physicality when it comes to the music. This is littered with pictures, really, moody black and white shots, a poem by Stevie Nicks, a poem by Taylor Swift herself in the back, and the inserts are also decorated as well, along with Target has this beautiful crystal record, which I have not seen something that looks like this before. You can see right through the record. So it's not black. It's a crystal record, which is really cool. I think that's really fun. When I was a kid, I would pore over album liner notes, right? That's how I knew that Jim Keltner and Jeff Lynne and Jeff Emmerich, they were working on old records and stuff like that. I feel like with streaming, you don't get that, right? Like you have to dig. If your streaming app has that information on it, you have to dig. But this feels like you're buying a book, right? It feels like you can go through and really see who played what, and really get involved in the whole moodiness of the record. I think that's great. I think that's like something it should be a celebration when you release one of these things. I think if you're going to pay $40 for the record, it should come with something substantial. There's so many records that cost so much money now because records are back in the zeitgeist and they come with nothing. It's just like, hey, here's the songs, which is great. That's exactly what you're buying it for. But like, can you tell me any kind of background on how you came to the songs? Like, can you give me that window into your life? And and this is exactly what happens here. And so the packaging itself, is fantastic. The confusion and the conflation in which bonus tracks are listed is a little bit much. I think Taylor Swift and others have been criticized for this before, and it's not really a criticism of her, but it's it's a criticism of how they're releasing some of these songs. There's the actual album, right? There is sometimes an extended edition, right, which has different artwork. And now there's the anthology, which is seemingly online. I went to Target to get this, so I didn't go to a record store. But it leaves you wondering, what's the official actual record, right? Like, are there 4 different versions of this record? Because I'm not going to spend $40 4 times just to get everything physical. And I feel like that's a little bit of like, it's a little bit like tipping culture run amok, you know? The other day I was in Orlando and I was in a drive-thru and getting a coffee, getting a breakfast sandwich, and the person in the drive-thru reached out with one of those machines and said, "Would you like to leave a tip?" I'm like, "No, this is a drive-thru. Get that out of my face." And this is what I feel like with these extended editions, is that they're kind of seemingly tapping into that collector's bug and saying, you know what, if you really like this album, you're going to buy it 4 times, which seems a little excessive and also leads to a little bit of confusion and about, well, I want the standard print, right? Like I wanted the print that had all the songs on it. Is that going to happen? That will probably come down the road. It was just a little bit confusing. It's just, with Midnight's was the same way, right? 2 years ago, there were like 4 different editions. It's like, come on, like you're paying for a different costume at this point. It's not really worth it. The music itself is, it's an interesting experience. Again, I've listened to it once. So these are raw thoughts. I don't think there's a hit on this album, really, that's going to extend the life of this thing. And I say this with one caveat, that this is they said the 11th studio album by Taylor Swift, and which seems hard to believe considering that she seems like that first album that she did years ago seems like it came out yesterday, right? But this is the 11th album, and I'm not sure if they're including the re-releases and the re-records and in that thing. It just seems like a lot. But the Taylor's versions in that total, but this is the 11th version. So if you're going and trying to reinvent yourself for the 11th time, you know, that's quite a feat, right? There's always going to be a little bit of a lull in every songwriter's discography, right? I mean, you know, with the exception of maybe the Beatles, right? But, you know, you could even say the White Album was probably stretching it too far. You know, George Martin famously said that the White Album probably should have just been one LP, and it would have been one of the greatest records of all time, but it was filled with filler. This one suffers a little bit of a different problem. It just feels like each one of the songs are very similar in nature and production and sound. It feels like you go from one sad song to the next 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 sad song. Hey, this one seems like it's building to something. Nope, it's a sad song. It's very, very macabre. And I think that's good at a certain time. I think it was appropriate maybe in 2020. I think, you know, I don't know Taylor Swift that well, but I know that Folklore and Evermore kind of have that little bit more sad sound. It was kind of appropriate in 2020 when the world was going upside down. Now, I don't know if the vibe is quite the same. It feels angsty. It feels like a lot of her aggression is coming out, and which is nothing wrong with writing like that. I just feel like you have to produce it a little bit more so that you're not constantly being hit in the face with sad song, because eventually the feeling wears thin, right? You want it to be mixed up. I found myself listening to this album and going, I wonder if there's any production intervention allowed anymore at this point with someone as big as Taylor Swift, where someone can like step up and go, you know what, maybe you should place this song here, or take some of the songs from the anthology and put them back in the album, because these songs over here are a little bit more hit makers, and this is like more of an songwriting expression, but they're not the greatest to lead off the album. I wonder, after you make 11 albums and try to count on your hands the amount of artists that you know that have 11 albums. And can you make that comment anymore? And would it be taken seriously at this point? You know, like can you give a critique to someone like Paul McCartney at some point, knowing his track record? Is Taylor Swift the same way? It certainly seems like it, because this album is very, very different, and it's not necessarily in a good way either. I found myself actually really enjoying the actual anthology, the 15 other tracks, a lot more, because it was just more varied. You know, it was more of like, hey, we're not going to stay in the same vibe the whole time. We're going to have a happy song here. We're going to bring it back down. There's a little bit more of an up and down, and a little bit more of a waveform, a roller coaster to ride on those 15 other tracks, which made me think, why didn't you just put out that one as the album? Or not put that one out at all and maybe wait 6 months to put out that album. So very, very interesting feeling coming out of this thing. I don't think necessarily this is the greatest album, but it was fun to kind of go out and get the album and get immersed in it. And hopefully within a couple playthroughs, it's going to start to grow on me a little bit more as a album that I enjoy. I'm already starting to kind of like the title track a little bit more. I think that one and the country song, But Daddy, I Love Him, I think that's actually a really nice number on here. Everything else, I feel like I can take or leave. You know, not exactly, you know, in today's world, like who's listening to an album all the way through anymore? You know, you're looking for that one hit that's going to kind of project you through. I think it's very rare to see a very good album that you can listen to like 15, 14 tracks through and really enjoy every single number. That's just not the music industry anymore. So maybe I shouldn't be expecting every single song to be a banger for a release anymore. Maybe that's just not the way it goes about. The only other thing I wanted to say about the album too was that it was quite explicit, and there's nothing wrong with that. People swear in songs, whatever. I just wonder if that's ever a concern for not her, but the production company, right? Because when you do something like that, when you swear in songs, like even in Down Bad, I think it's the first occurrence of like, if I can't have him as in the chorus, right? You're just wiping out a market of kids, right? Like you're going to get some kids who just want to sing it just to you know, feel like they're on the edge. But I wonder, but you're kind of wiping out that market of like mothers that are going to put in this album while they're listening with their kids in the car. There's a McCartney album, Egypt Station, that has, you know, a song called Fuh You, right? Immediately you're not going to put that album on anymore because you know you're going to have to skip over that track. I remember as a kid not being able to listen to Maxwell's Silver Hammer because it was about Maxwell going on a rampage, right? Like, and that's on Abbey Road, right? And think about all the time I missed listening to that great album just because of something kind of bizarre on it. I wonder if that's a consideration here. Like, you know, her songwriting language is so good, right? And her poetry is really good that you wonder why she feels the need to include that in the songs, right? And not to be a prude or anything like that, but like when AMC was doing Breaking Bad, I think AMC allowed one swear every season. So they used it powerfully, right? When you watch that show, and that show would deliver basically a swear, you knew, boom, it just kind of hit you in a different way because it wasn't like constantly littered through the songs. I just wonder why they decide to kind of make it a little bit more edgy. Is it just to feel edgy? Because I feel like people have gone through their entire songwriting career without doing that, and they're just as edgy and cool and stuff like that. It just feels weird. And maybe I'm just projecting what I think Taylor Swift should be into, you know, and not accepting what she's become. But I don't know. It just kind of feels like if you're that good of a songwriter, why resort to that? You know? It's a conversation. My overall review of the Tortured Poets Department, it's Not the greatest album ever released by Taylor Swift. Won't be the last album released by Taylor Swift. Upon first listen, I wanted to lay off the Tortured Poets department. Every single one of them. I wanted to bring them in and say, guys, this is your last day. The department is closing. Since then, I realized that mass layoffs are maybe a little bit too extreme. But if you're looking for a happy Taylor Swift album, this is not it. This is the season 2 Ted Lasso of Taylor Swift albums here. If you're angry and angsty, then this is the album for you. If you're happy and feeling good about life, I recommend listening to the anthology, The Other Side of this double LP by Taylor Swift. But again, kudos for releasing some songs. Again, she's a great songwriter, but the album hopefully will grow on me a little bit more than it has. We're going to take a quick break from talking about Taylor Swift, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about John Sterling and his impact on me as a young Yankees fan and an old Yankees fan, and how his retirement was a little bit of a moment I had to kind of comprehend with. So when we come back. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Powell Not Found podcast. We just finished up a little bit of an in-depth review on a Taylor Swift album because no one knows, but, until they hear my review, the Ultimate Swiftie, they really don't know what they're listening to. So I'm glad everyone tuned in for that first part of the conversation. This week was kind of filled with a little bit of mixed emotions because John Sterling, who is the legendary radio announcer for the New York Yankees, announced his retirement from the radio booth. John Sterling had been the Yankees broadcaster since 1989 and stayed there until 2024 and abruptly, after about the first couple weeks of the season, decided, hey, well, I'm going to call it quits. It was a little bit of a shock to me, because John Sterling is the voice of the New York Yankees. You know, you can't hear a clip of the Yankees without hearing John Sterling's iconic home run calls. An A-bomb from A-Rod, or El Capitan. It is high, it is far, it is gone. That kind of energy, that vaudevillian energy that used to fill my ears listening to that in the basement of my house when I was a kid, or in long car rides back home when we would dial into CBS, WCBS 880, or more recently WFAN 880. It's sad to hear. John Sterling was such a fun announcer. You know, he would have his faux pas every now and then. He would have his errors of calling a home run that was basically a pop fly to center, but like it's something about that just added to it, added to like the fun of the game, getting duped by John Sterling's calls. But he also created like a soundtrack and a reliability to listening to the games, that you knew you were listening to Yankees baseball. You didn't have to have any kind of confirmation that it was the game, because John Sterling's voice was that unique. He was in a group of people like Vin Scully, like Charlie Steiner, like John Miller, where it's like the minute you heard his voice, you knew exactly what you were listening to. It's going to be sad. It's going to be really different to hear him not on the radio. And I guess he retired because he was just couldn't do the traveling anymore. I mean, he's 86 years old. He called 5,631 games, including a streak of 5,030 straight games with the Yankees, which is quite impressive, and ultimately will be sorely missed. I mean, all the love and stuff, and the bleacher creatures chanting his name, the ceremony that they gave for him on April 20th was definitely well deserved. It just made me feel like, oh, like it's just not going to be the same. The calls are not going to be the same. The theatrical nature of John Sterling was the perfect match for the New York Yankees to have, right? The Yankees have such a formal outward presence, and something about his authenticity and goofy at times calls and stuff like that made the Yankees tolerable at some times, even during great times and during really bad times when the teams were not good. John would not hold back on calling the team garbage if he not specifically garbage, but like he would call out players and plays and talk about like these last couple of years when analytics were sweeping the game and it became this defensive game and lack of offense, and he would commonly criticize everybody for not bunting, like not bunting more, not playing small ball, like trying to hit the home runs. It was that kind of authenticity that made John Sterling a joy to listen to, because he really tapped into the fan who was listening alongside. People said John, when he locked in, he was locked in, right, to every single pitch. And you could feel it listening to him. A lot of times I would listen to the radio broadcast. One of my biggest pet peeves was MLB.TV did not have a way that you could kind of line up the radio broadcast and the TV broadcast, because they would be slightly, I think, ahead of TV because they're audio, or slightly behind. So you'd listen to it like off-center, but just so I can hear John Sterling, because I think his broadcast was so superior, and it was of a time that we just don't hear anymore. His voice was distinctive. It was really fun to listen to. And let's just hear the man for himself talk about why he decided to retire. So,
I can't believe this has happened to me. I retired because I just can't do it. I can do the games. The games are easy, and working with Susan is a lark. But I just don't have the strength and stamina. And I figured the best way to begin this, before your questions, my first day on the air, really big. Oh, was that big? To finally get a job and be able to support myself. My first day on the air was February 1st, 1960. Now, since no one in this room was born then, that's how long I've been on the air. So that's 64 years. And you know what? I'm really tired. So I'm looking forward to not being on the air, which will start tomorrow.
How do you want to...
So that is, again, John Sterling basically announcing that he's tired, he's done, and he's going out on his own terms, which is exactly how you want these things to end. So congratulations to John. I thought we'd do one last thing here and just listen to one of his calls before we move on to Conan O'Brien Must Go. So let me load that up here. This is John Sterling on the call for Derek Jeter's 3,000th hit, which, if some of you might remember, was a home run against Tampa Bay. So let's take a listen.
So he is one hit away. He is at 2,999 as he stands in. And there's the chant, which you can hear in the background. Derek Jeter. Here comes the 3-2 from Price. Swung on and hit in the air to deep left. That ball is high. It is far. It is gone. He's homered. Derek Jeter homers to tie the game. And there it is. Hit number 3,000. Derek Jeter has achieved another milestone in his Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, well, congratulations, John, on a well-deserved retirement. And the voice of the New York Yankees will never truly be the same without you behind the mic. So congratulations, and we'll be right back with some Conan O'Brien Must Go reviews. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. And we are going to wrap up the show pretty quickly here. But I wanted to talk about one last thing for this week, and then we'll be back next week with obviously more things that I want to talk about here on the Powell Not Found podcast. Conan O'Brien is back. And finally, his much anticipated HBO Max show finally debuted. I mean, this thing had been teased, or at least talked about, since Conan kind of left his late night show back in 2021. Excuse me, when they were trying to wrap up the whole late night bit after about 10 years being at TBS, and they talked about what the show was, and I think it became very clear that it wasn't going to be a late night show anytime soon. But a more of an extension of Conan Without Borders, the travel kind of show that he was doing for a while for TBS, going to Ghana, going to Qatar, going to Japan. Those shows were so successful. His jaunt to Italy with Jordan Schlansky, and now they're back with 4 more episodes on Max, and the show is excellent. It is really good. It's as a big Conan fan, it's hard for me to criticize Conan just in general, because I think his comedy is on point. It's goofy. It's not really political, which is kind of a refreshing feeling, especially since most of the shows like The Late Show, like Late Night Tonight, or Last Week Tonight rather, or Jimmy Kimmel have kind of gone in that way where everything is about politics. This show is just about being goofy in other countries. You probably learn less about the country than you would in any other travel show, just because it's more about Conan just goofing around with the people. He goes to 4 different countries. We're seeing them here right on the screen. I watched the Norway one. It is very, very goofy comedy. It's really well produced. I mean, you can just see a light years difference between the speed in which they had to do some of the other shows. And I'm talking specifically about like Greenland, because they needed to keep it in the zeitgeist, because it was all stimulated by something Trump said about Greenland or trying to purchase Greenland. And now these ones are so well done. They're well shot. They really look like a beautiful travel show. Its self-awareness is also very, very high. Conan breaks the fourth wall many, 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 many times. They have a lot of fun with drones and kind of being a little bit more self-aware with these shots about how like everyone loves a drone shot, but they run into difficulty, and it's a very well put together comedy show. I recommend everybody go try it. It's 4 episodes. They're 45 minutes long, so they're not going to take up a lot of time. But they're such a good compliment to his podcast, and they just seem like they're really well done. They're stretching the boundaries. Sometimes they do feel a little formulaic if you've seen a lot of the Conan Without Borders, but that's the show that they created, right? And this is just an extension of that. This thing should stick around for a long time. They should keep doing more of these things. It was nice to see him reemerge as a comedy force in the public eye. I think the one thing about shutting down the late night show is that you didn't get that constant drip feed of comedy, which must have been really, really difficult to keep up all the time. But seeing him, even in the lead up to the release for this show, was kind of a nice reminder that Conan O'Brien kind of represented something else, some sort of goofy humor that we need amidst all of this kind of humor dedicated towards more negative things like politics, right? If you don't see the show, at least go watch his Tonight Show appearance, him returning to his former show, Let's Be Real, and also his appearance on Hot Ones, where he eats those spicy wings, is just like genuinely funny madness. It's one of those feelings like Steve Martin talks a lot about, of like, you don't know why you're laughing, but you just feel like it's great, right? Because of the madness and the goofiness that he brings. That kind of comedy comes to the fore here. and is really, really well done, really well shot. Congratulations to all the writers. Go check out Conan O'Brien Must Go. It is a must see. Do you like what I did there? That's pretty nice. Well, I'll end with that. Guys, thank you for listening to this week's show. We are, again, on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. We will be back next week talking hopefully about more TV shows and Fallout. I got to finish Manhunt. I've got one episode left, and I still have not. I have to renew my Apple TV Plus. It cut out right during the last episode of Manhunt, so I got to renew that. But anyway, enough about me. Tune in next week so you can hear more about me. Mark Powell here with the Powell Not Found podcast. Thanks, guys. Bye.